What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear, but I'm feeling foggy, I'm in the abyss. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Chris. It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Judgment Seesaw. Again, I'm your host, Ronnie Evans, and I'm here with another special guest, Chris Allen from MB Fantasy Life and like 15 other websites over the years. Chris, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, and my journey to get to this point has been like kind of like at a whole bunch of different websites, and I feel like I've been blessed to have these types of experiences that have put me in this spot. But these are the types of shows that I really do find the most exciting. Not just because I get the chance to talk about myself, because I hate talking about myself, but just more about it. It gets off the topic of the set, like the rigmarole of, well, how many targets does this person have? How many touchdowns is this person going to make? Like, this player is better than that player, like all the other debates. And it gives me time to actually like interact with other people, like outside of the things that that most folks think about us for. Like, people see Chris Allen, they think weather, they think fantasy life, they think, like you mentioned, 15 other websites and all those other things. But not having the time to be as, outgoing on Twitter as I really want to be, or sharing my life as I want to be, just because of like time, family, and all those other things. Being able to discuss things that are pertinent to like what goes on, like, between the ears, outside of like the content, like thinking about football all the time. These are the types of things that I really enjoy doing. So no, I really do appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you for going out and doing a series like this, because it is important for people to understand what goes on like behind the scenes, like for a lot of people that are out here doing this stuff day in and day out, and to give a platform for folks to be able to do it. I think it's a wonderful thing. So hats off to you, man.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. Right back at you. I think you and the crew at MB, and just in general, Matthew Berry's crew across the board, do great stuff. And you've been doing some pretty fantastic things in the fantasy base for many years now. Can you give a quick run through? Actually, before we do this, let me cut back. If you're just now watching and this is your first episode of the Judgment Seesaw, the concept and the name, it's not about me judging Chris. It's actually comes from economics, and it's used by therapists to help people that struggle with like anger management issues or emotional quick lapses of judgment. And it comes from a social paradigm where if you are like looking at something or talking to someone and you are judging them, you're not understanding. And you can't actually do both at the same time. It's impossible. And it's a fun exercise for anyone that's watching. If you want to try it this week, go listen to somebody tell a story and try to judge them and understand them simultaneously, and you will find out it's almost impossible. It's pretty tough. And so that's the point of the Judgment Seesaw. It's about like it's just a metaphor to help you check yourself and make sure you're really listening. And so for you, I want to understand everything about you, mental health wise and so forth. But before we do that, I know we mentioned MB Fantasy Life, Matthew Berry, the crew, and all of them, but like, what else you got going on? Give a little run through on what you're doing in the fantasy industry right now.
So outside of the like you mentioned, being over at Fantasy Life for a year and a half now, thereabouts. Like outside of that, like my biggest thing, and we'll probably get into the mentorship portion at some point throughout the show. But one of the things that I've been focused on is trying to change the demographics of the sports media industry at large. And one of the things that I've tried to do for the most part in order to help that is help start a group like called the Cookout Group. And it's a group about 50, 60 like primarily like fantasy football content creators, but we've brought in some other people that have interests like either just outside of sports in general, might do baseball or whatever, but the goal is to start to like, I guess, internally organize ourselves so that we have a good understanding of what our skill sets are, and then also being able to bring together just it's just more or less like a resource group, understanding like what the institutional knowledge is of people of color that have been in the industry for a while, folks like Marcus Grant, Ray Garvin, James Coe, like people like that have seen it all and been to the highest of highs, and you can probably still see like Marcus Grant on TV like right now, probably if you turn on your TV. I'll be at a restaurant or something like that, and I'll see fantasy not fantasy fantasy live like on TV, and I'll be like, yeah, I know that guy. I know Marcus. But you've seen those types of people, but just like what are their stories and what things are what bits and pieces of hey, don't do this, or these are the things that happened to me, could they provide to the next generation of people that want to get into the industry of color, and that they would want to be able to share with them. And that is a part of what the cookout is supposed to be and what we try and do, while also trying to bring in enough either donations or sponsorships so that we can send people out to conferences and things of that nature, so that they can start to meet people that are the decision makers, that are the content managers, the people that could be able to either provide them with opportunities or help connect them with people that are in charge to do that, or also can at least give them some feedback on where they are. I think a lot of the anxiety, and I know that of course it fits really well into the topic of conversation for today, is you go out and you look at any job posting, whether it's from Underdog to Football Guys, another wonderful company I contributed out for a while, 4for4, another company, Fantasy Life, whatever. You will look at some of those requirements and you will see, I don't know, 3 years of experience, or have to be able to do this or whatever. And it can be for some folks that anxiety level will just ratchet up, because you're like, well, I don't have 5 years of experience doing this thing, or I'm not a savvy person operating a Twitter account, or I can't do.
Yeah.
But there's some flexibility in some of those things. And part of what the cookout is about is being able to match people or connect people with folks that are in the know of where those flexibilities are, and what truly hiring managers are looking for in those cases. So if you don't check every single box, if you check 5 of the 6 or 4 of the 6, or you're really good at one of those things that a hiring manager is really looking for, at least having that conversation to start to demystify some of the things that come around hiring, and just getting people the confidence to say oh, okay, well, I'm going to apply to this position. Even if I don't get it, I'll get the feedback to know, okay, I need to work on X, Y, and Z in order to get there. So it's a mix of everything. Like I said, it's a resource group that will allow people to really to help put them on the path in order to get to where they want to go. But that's where, again, the mentorship portion, the addressing some of the anxieties, addressing some of the hardships that comes with being a minority in the sports media industry, that's where the cookout group is really what we try and focus on. And over the last year and a half, we at least start to see some progress, but it takes time, takes a village. But that's really been my focus as of right now.
That's incredible, man. It's almost like you're trying to provide clarity to the uncertainty for a certain subset of the industry that not just in our industry, but in society, of course, has been overlooked and often dealt a pretty tough hand compared to others. I think that's fantastic. That's really, really cool. When you were talking about it at first, I was like, I want to join. I don't know that I fit the bill though.
Not maybe allies though. We always look for people that want to support what we do. And I know that at least sometimes the response is well, I need help too. So why can't I get in on some of the things that you guys are doing or whatever? And I while I understand it, the goal, or at least the I guess my typical response to that is we're all trying to push forward together. And so while the information that we try and bring in is something that we want to provide to the people that are part of the cookout, I mean, there's nothing preventing you from applying to the same jobs that we're looking at, or for trying to work with the same, or being at the same conferences that we're at. It's just that for us, it's all right, well, we want to try and see more, don't you all want to see some change in this industry? Don't you want to see more Lawrence Jacksons in the industry, more Ray Garvins in the industry, Jordan Ridge? I mean, all this. Don't you want to see some of those people, the swagger, Laquan Jones, fire content only? Don't you want to see some more of those people in the industry? And that's where we want to make sure those types of people that we've all come to know and love over the past 4 or 5 years, that they get a chance to shine, and we get to see more of those.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, you talked a little bit about anxiety with that and using it almost as a verb for like the areas of fogginess in the industry, trying to get a start. But for you, if we peel it back and look at Chris Allen, do you mind sharing a little bit about what your experience has been with mental health and what you have seen in other people? Anything you're comfortable on that front?
Oh yeah. At least for me personally, it's something that I struggle with almost on a daily basis. And for folks that like have followed me like over the years, I would say that I started off when I first like that's probably like 6 7 years ago. Uh, Posting as often as I can, like just trying to get my name out there, getting involved in conversations and all that. And I really have noticed that I've pulled back over the last like 2 or 3 years. And one of the things that I've noticed is that like part of the reason for that is the I don't know there's not level of scrutiny that comes with being a content creator, because that like even for me being told that I'm wrong, or if I've missed on a call, or I wrote about a player and they wound up not doing anything. I mean, that's just going to happen. I mean,
Sure.
nobody's perfect at this job, or anything like that. But at least for me, it's the growth factor that I think a lot of folks struggle with, like in this industry, and myself included in that. If you're like, for being in this industry for, I think this is my 7th year doing this, and like you see other people that are out there posting every day and they have like tens of thousands of followers, and you look at your own follower account and it's almost like one of those comparisons with like, well, why does that person have so many followers? Like, I wish I could post like all day and like and all this other things. And I did like for a number, like for probably like the last 2 or 3 years, it did hit me where it's like, well, you're not doing enough, and you're not posting enough, and you're not getting your content out enough, and you're not you're not getting involved in
Insidious, man.
conversation. Oh, it definitely can. I mean, the level of like how much online that like we have to be in order to really become recognized within the industry, it does plague people for a time where, I mean, you'll see people get like 10 15,000 followers, but then they'll get burnt out, like as
Mhm.
their content starts to dry up, or they just don't have as many things to say as they used to, and all of that. And so for me personally, over the last like year or so, I actually did start going to a therapist, maybe about like 9 months ago.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and it's helped a ton, both myself like, and for my marriage, and like for the rest of my family, just like understanding like who I am, like as a person, and what I'm truly capable of. There's only so many hours in the day. I still have a full-time job, as like we were talking before the show. I'm an engineer, like for the Air Force. And so how much of that time can I really dedicate to just being online and talking with people, or crafting like the best tweet that's going to get 100,000 views and like a bunch of likes and retweets and all those other things. Like I don't have that time, nor am I, like, to be quite honest, nor am I that creative or witty in order to do that sort of thing. I recognize that about myself, and I do think that that's where, like, I would advocate for a lot of people, is just like truly like sitting down and thinking like, is this something that you're capable of doing? And if you can honestly tell yourself yes, and of course, like, go through, do it, like figure out all the things that you need to do in order to become that best tweeter or Xer, I guess, if you want to use the right term now, since it's not Twitter anymore, but whatever.
Right.
But like but if that's your passion, if you have energy towards it, go. But if that's not the case, and understanding what your limitations are, I think that's where, like, forcing it and then getting yourself into that, like, if I don't get this number of followers, or if I don't get this many likes and retweets, and harnessing your own like self-image, like, to what your Twitter account looks like afterwards. I mean, that's where I think you will find yourself in that negative cycle, which I definitely found myself in a couple of years ago. And like, but regardless, whatever you come to terms with yourself, and like, and accepting like where you're at, then just keep it pushing. Like, after that, keep writing either writing or creating videos, or whatever content that you feel the most comfortable with doing, and then the followers will come afterwards, the interactions will come afterwards. But I would say, and like, I put this out there as a thing to a lot of folks. Silence doesn't always have to be based off of like how many posts you have. Just going out and like messaging somebody, like I
Mm.
messaged you, or like being a part of other group threads, or like, it can be private. But I would say, just like, your activity isn't judged by just how many posts that you do. Your
Yes.
activity can be judged by the relationships that you form on here. And that doesn't have to be something that's in the public eye. So there's a lot more ways that you can at least like form enough relationships that you can have a good experience like around here. And so at least for me, like from a mental health standpoint, that's a thing that I've had to come to terms with over the last like 6 to 9 months. And it's been much more fulfilling than where I was at like maybe a year to 2 years ago.
Sure. All right. I have 2 things. I love that.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to be selfish for a second and just do a personal share to back up what you just said. So me, Ronnie Evans, the guy that's hosting this show, like I'm finishing the month out. Bob Harris is coming on. I've got you from MB Fantasy Life, so on and so forth. Derek Brown, Dave Klug, Josh Largy, 15 other people that are fantastic.
Wonderful people, all good dudes.
And I haven't done a single bit of content in this industry in almost 3 years, besides like 8 podcasts. And when you were talking about your content doesn't have to be public, and you mentioned like it can be private, that is what I try to preach to people and hope people could pick up from my story, at least, is that this industry really is like a fantastically open and welcoming community. You just, as long as you respect yourself, I have it pinned on my profile. If you respect yourself or love yourself or value yourself or something like that, and you just go out there and put it out there, the fantasy industry is like one of the rare industries in human existence right now that will kind of just embrace you. If you're a good person and you put it out there, but you don't have to do it publicly. You can also privately message everyone in the industry and over time build relationships and tell people, like I have been for years now, like, hey, I'm in therapy, but I love this industry. I used to have a podcast and it did well. I've been around for a decade, but I'm not doing content right now. I just want to connect with you so that one day when I am ready, I might be able to help you out or you can help me out. Let's be friends. And it works. It's not me. I'm not special. It is true for anyone that wants to take that approach, feels alone, feels like they're on an island in the fantasy space. There are hundreds of people with full-time roles that are, as long as the schedule permits, are available to interact a couple times. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a really overlooked aspect. And mental health, it seems like the industry, you have a subset of people at the top that have found roles. And even within those people at the top 10% or so, there's still volatility. It's never really a guaranteed thing. This is a journalism-based space. Journalism is volatile. And then you go down and it's like 2,000 or 3,000 people that don't have full-time roles. And for the most part, I would assume kind of inside Aspire to have that. And when you have that big of a swath of people that are still climbing the ladder and struggling to get their way up, and there's so many people and so much to look at, and is this strategy right? Like what you're trying to help people out with the Cookout group, it creates, whether it is justified or not, just a natural human reaction to that is eventually frustration turns into resentment turns into judgment, and people spiral into like these little cliques. But what I've learned with talking with people like you in private meetings about like AI and stuff over the last year is when you talk to people at the higher level of this industry, there isn't really that much clickiness. It's mostly like the further down you go, it's just a natural result of the state of the rat race, if you will. So sorry, I rambled a little bit there. You got me fired up. But
no. I mean, you're absolutely correct about, at least from my personal experience, I've seen pretty much everything. I've experienced pretty much everything that you're talking about. Like I got my start in the industry sending my articles to Matt Harmon. I was in a literally like 7-8 years ago, I was just a fan of fantasy football, not a writer. I mean, I've done like academic articles like for my job or whatever. Like I have this is not to brag or anything like that, but I actually do have a patent like for some of the work that I did in engineering like 10, 12 years ago or something like that.
That's incredible.
But like when I was doing like some like research like for the Air Force and all that, and like a couple other guys that I was working with at the time, like we put together stuff and sent the patent. It was like, oh yeah, you got approved. I was like, oh cool, I have a patent. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. But it's just like I got into a league with Matt Harmon and Matt Franciscovich when both of them were still working for the NFL Network at the time. And then I just came up with this idea for analyzing weather, like for fantasy football. And Harmon didn't know me from anybody. And I just said, hey, Matt, I sent it to both Matts. I was like, hey, Matts. And I was like, can you guys take a look at this and let me know, does this make any sense? Like, has anybody thought about this or whatever?
Right.
And Harmon hit me back. He was like, no, I've never seen anything about it. I mean, it looks pretty good. Maybe change some of this other stuff and put it out. And then I put it out. And And then he like shared it with everybody. And like, I think like that day I'm sitting there like staring at my phone, like sweating as like all of the notifications from Twitter were coming in of people that were like following me and all that. It was like Josh Norris and like JJ Zacharyson, like all these other people like taking like, I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is happening. Like, what did I just do? Like, am I gonna be able like, oh God. But now do I have to write articles like every day? Like, what if I put myself into? Like, oh God. But yeah, like it's folks like Harmon that like you can just like reach out to. Marcus is like the same way. JJ is the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had at like while he has never helped, he hasn't directly impacted my my career in this like fantasy industry directly. But I've reached out to Evan Silva and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna come in Chicago. He was like, dude, come stay at my place. I was like,
That's so cool.
Like you're Evan Silva, like I can just go get a hotel. Like, no, you come to Chicago, you stay at my place. It was like I was going there to see John Daigle, and he was like, yeah, dude, man, come stay at my place, and I just stayed at his place. Like I've done it like a few times, but it's like people like that. It's just like they're so open, like and it's wild that you would think that, like you think the persona, you think that the professionalism, like you see, they go to the Twitter account, and you see like over 100,000 followers and all that. Like, why would you give time to me? Like, why would you even think to respond to me? But if you will find like more often than not, if you come politely and you said like, hey, like I'm looking for this, or like, hey, have you thought about that? Or whatever the request or whatever you want to talk about is, like 9 times out of 10, like they will respond to you in kind, and you'll find you'll be able to create relationships with people that you think are just like the titans of this industry, and they're just normal people like all the rest of us.
I love that. And just a note for anyone that's watching, if you're reaching out to people and you're like, these guys are full of it, these people that didn't respond to me, if you are DMing someone for the first time, just so you know, it goes into like a queue, and you have to actually click on that private queue to go read through them.
Yeah.
And these people that have full-time jobs in the industry, or people like Chris who have technically like a full-time job but then a second one, there's like they have to have time to go and look at that, and it takes an active effort to go read unread new messages. So just be patient. If you hit somebody up, they don't reply, there's nothing wrong with harassing them 2 weeks later. Just sending
just see him, you hit him up. Or,
harassing is a strong word. Politely,
right? Just like polite, like, hey, did you happen to see this? If not, like, I'm sorry to bother you, or whatever. Actually, the best, like, we can get on to the next subject, like, real quick, and it's just like best story ever, actually, for me, and like what we were talking about just a second ago. This was probably like almost 10 plus years ago. My wife and I were headed down to New Orleans for the first time. We've been talking about going there. And like the only person that like we've been wanting to go vacation there for a while, and the only person that I knew that lived in the area that might be able to give recommendations is Sigmund Bloom. Now I wasn't working at Football Guys at the time, but of course I knew Sigmund. Everybody knows Sigmund. Everybody's listened to him on the couch. It's like whatever. But I knew Harmon had done some work over at Football Guys, and so
Harmon got his start there, right?
Yep, yeah. Before going out to NFL Network. And so I hit up Harmon and I was like, hey, Christina and I, like my wife, we're headed down to New Orleans. And I want to hit up Sig for just dinner recommendations. Nothing big. Like, do you think he would respond? It's like, oh yeah, like hit him up. Like he'll and he'll give you like a whole bunch of recommendations. Like, oh all right. So I sent Sigmund this like 2 paragraphs of just like, hey, sorry to bother you, sir. We're like wife and I, like we're looking for recommendations. So sorry to bother you, but if you have some recommendations or whatever, please let me know. Sincerely, Chris Allen. Dude, he responded in less than like 5 minutes. And it was just like, yep, you can go here, like check this out or whatever. Here's my cell phone number. Let me know when you're in town. If you want to grab a couple of drinks, let me know what times you're there. We'll go and hang out. Again, sweating. I was like, Sigmund Bloom, like, wants to hang out with me? Like, what are you talking about? Like, oh God, like, and I'm freaking out telling my wife. And of course, my wife, she's like, I have no idea who that is. Why are you inviting one of your friends on our vacation? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, but it's Sigmund Bloom. Like, what do you want me to do? So yeah, but still, it goes to show you just like the people in this industry are like so outgoing, but it just comes down to like you have to approach them. You have to be able to approach them politely and all that, and like you just never know what type of relationship you'll be able to grow or to even to create without taking that first step.
Yes, I think that's very well said. It's a big loving, open community.
Oh yeah.
Of course, if you're on the small end, though, just to go back to what I said earlier, for anyone that's watching that is like, I've had some bad experiences. What are they talking about? There's like 10,000 people in the industry. There's going to be some people that are a little rough around the edges, or
Mhm.
there's good people that have bad days. So don't let a single interaction with someone define your appreciation for them or like define them for you.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's true for me. I've blown up on people over the years, and I sincerely regret it. I have gone back and followed up. I don't do it anymore.
Mhm.
But yeah, like in my mid-20s over the last decade, early last decade, like man, I was a bit of a firecracker, and I had to learn to tame that.
It
But
happens, man.
and I see that in other people too, and I recognize it. I'm like,
Mhm.
shoot that person a DM because I see their stuff normally, and it's not like this, and just say, hey,
Right.
love you. I hope everything's going okay. If you need anything, reach out. I
That's
try
how
to
you
do
gotta
that
do it.
a lot, and
Yeah.
I think that everyone, for the most part, has their own little. There were people that have found success socializing and becoming. Whether it's someone like me who is small time in the industry, but I'm very proud of the fact that I feel like I know a lot of people,
Mhm.
or people like you, or people like Sigmund that have been around forever that helped found a lot of the industry. Like
Yes.
there are little tricks that we all have and habits we all have that are about subconsciously like giving back and taking care of each other. And I think it's really, really special.
Mhm.
The closest thing I've seen to it was ironically the music industry, which I worked in for 6 years,
Okay.
but it wasn't the business side. It was the talent. The talent all loved each other. The business side of the music
Yeah.
industry is like the worst.
Mhm.
But
I
anyway,
can do that.
so you mentioned engineering, real quick.
Mhm.
Transition from mechanical engineering to a career in fantasy sports. You're still doing the mechanical engineering stuff, of course, but can you
Yeah.
share what inspired that shift when you initially reached out and sent some of those articles over to Matt and so on and so forth? Like, what got you thinking about that and made you decide to explore it?
It was just more of a like I've been listening so long to both like him and of course like Matthew Berry and like Mike Clay and some other folks, and it was uh I think I was only listening to maybe like 2-3 podcasts a week or something like that. Now it's just like my Apple library is completely filled with podcasts, and I listen to it like just content nonstop. But at least for me, it was trying to understand like how I could fit like into the industry, because for maybe like a year or so, like leading up to writing my first article, which is horrific, by the way. I've gone back and read some of my earlier stuff. I'm like, wow, you're really bad at this. Like, you should probably get better. But like, I think it was more of just like like, can I find a niche in the area? And I think for a lot of folks, that could be part of the reason folks like don't have, or like they don't take that first step. It's like, well, what am I going to write about? What am I going to do that's going to set me apart like from the industry? And the weather stuff was the first thing that actually like got me curious about writing. And I've told this story like a number of times, but I'll tell it again. I was actually listening to Sigmund Bloom, one of their recap shows, like him and Cecil afterwards, and it was like a Week 7 game between I think it was between the Ravens and Washington, and it was supposed to be like Deshaun Jackson going up against the corner, the Sharice Wright, and like he was like the horrific corner. Deshaun Jackson could have smoked him, and it didn't happen. I think Deshaun Jackson had like maybe like 3 for 60, 3 for 50 or something like that.
Windy day.
But like, yeah, it was like, yeah. And like, that was the thing. And I just remember it was just an offhanded comment like by Sig. He was like, oh, it was windy in the area, so that's probably why he didn't do well. And like, that was one of the first times like I think I'd ever listened to a show, and I was just like, really? Like, well, I think I could probably measure that. Like, I can probably find out like whether or not that actually had an impact or had anything to do with like why he didn't play well. And like, I was like, well, but of course, like you asked the question, and then afterwards, it's like my mind started like going back. Okay, well, how do I get data for it? Like, and what, like, how would I start to contextualize all of it? Like, what do I need? And so, like, even after that, it was like kind of one of those daunting, like, okay, like really, what have I gotten myself into? I'm like building scripts and like scraping data and like pulling stuff from Pro Football Reference, like all this other stuff. But at the end of it, I was like, wow, okay, I'm actually starting to understand this a bit more, and like I can see why people would make those statements and all of that. But my engineering background and the fact that I can like write code, and like we were talking over the show, like I was actually like writing up some code to analyze some best ball data that I pulled from Underdog, And like I'm actually like itching to get back into that. Like that's how nerd I am, folks. Like on a Saturday afternoon, I would just rather just sit here in my office and start writing up code to analyze like best ball data. Like that's where we're at. I'm so glad I'm married. I would never get a date like ever because of the stuff that I do like in my spare time. Like I'm into analyzing weather and then best ball data like on my Saturday afternoon. Like, good Lord, I'm so lucky to be married.
Hot commodity.
Oh yeah, like yeah, ladies, like watch out if I ever hit the market again. But like that was the reason why I got into doing this, is because like I can provide at least that analytical portion to the analysis that some folks can't do. Like they don't have that background. But also I would say that one of the other reasons why I got into doing it is that I have transitioned out of the lab, and I'm now more of a project manager, program manager,
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, like because I do have that ability to relate complex or like relatively complex. I mean, we're talking fantasy football here. It's not like too terribly complex or anything like that, but be able to relate like complex data and like distill it down into the things that make the most sense to people that don't have a like technical background.
Yeah.
And I was also like I was an adjunct professor for a number of years at a local community college. So like teaching and being able to relate technical ideas to people that struggle with that, like that's just my jam. Like I like doing that. I like doing that anyway. And so being able to do both of those things is what really got me into it. But now like it goes from trying to relate like trigonometry or statics and dynamics or thermodynamics to undergrad students now to, well, what the heck does EPA per play stand for? Or why do I care about targets per route run or any of the other, I guess, advanced stats that have become more to the, that's come more to the forefront of fantasy analysis nowadays. So like that was the shift. It was like, okay, I understand these things that people talk about, like the Mike Clays of the world and like the Dwayne McFarland's of the world. Actually, I'll see Dwayne in about like 5 or 6 hours because he's coming to Ohio. But like the people that are like the nerds, the Rich Rebars, the JJ Zacharistans, like, okay, I understand what they're saying. And like I get like why they're doing what they're doing, and I can speak in that terminology and then relate that to other people that have similar questions. So that's where it became like a thing for me to say that, okay, well, I can do some of these things that these other people are doing. So why not try my hand in it, try and write about it, and still keep my own like personality and being able to put myself into that work, like versus like trying to be anybody else, like or something like that. So that was kind of the transition behind it.
I love it. I have 2 thoughts on that. First of all, that is really valuable. I'm sure people have told you this before, but just to remind you, like people who are engineers and have technical backgrounds are not often the people that are good at explaining to others.
Oh, I met a lot of them.
I literally like my role pre-pandemic. I was at a tech firm and I was the sales enablement director and had a team of 500 developers, and my job was basically getting them to learn how to talk to clients. Mm-hmm. And it was like the subset, like the 10-20% at most of them that could do it naturally are like CTOs now.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And so that I think that is super valuable. It's not really relevant to this discussion. I just wanted to that's a really cool skill to have, and you should be very proud of yourself and thankful that you were able to like develop that skill over time, because it's awesome. Also, you spoke, and it reminded me of something I brought up on a couple shows. It's going to cut off our faces, but that's okay.
Oh, now what is this?
Have you heard of
over the side so people still see me?
Have you heard of Ikigai?
I have not.
Okay, so this is like a 1,000+ Japanese philosophy that's about.
I'm actually part Japanese, so this is really interesting.
All right, so I get to mansplain your own culture to you. This is
right. I'm learning. This is wonderful. Like I saw the word and I was like, I should probably know what this means.
So Ikigai is cool. It's about finding peace and happiness through work. And basically, if you're somebody like Chris has, in many ways, in my opinion, found kind of his Ikigai, working through his technical background, sharing, educating other people, exploring new things, and so on and so forth. It's got a path in life. You seem happy. I don't want to say that if you're not. We can talk about it.
No, I'm happy.
But for people that are in this industry that are looking to find, as you mentioned, like maybe the path isn't. This is throwing me off. I wish I could change the layout. Whatever. So maybe they don't know what their path is yet, or as you mentioned earlier, like, are you really built to go out, churn out 3 articles a day and 4 posts, is that really like what you're wired for? Make sure that that is something that you actually can do before you try and do it, because there's other roles in this industry. There's other ways to find a place and find purpose. And if you go and map out and you're struggling, not just for fantasy football, but in life, if you take this diagram and just draw the 4 circles intersection and start filling out the circular circles, then you'll be able to fill out the 4 quadrants on the inside, and it will lead you to the answer to what is like your ikigai, like your true purpose, a way to find fulfillment and happiness. And it's something my therapist shared with me a few years ago. And for me, my ikigai is like talking about mental health and talking about abstract creative solutions to society's problems or business problems. And funnily enough, as I discovered that, AI became a thing, and I was like, all right, well, there it is.
Interesting.
And,
I pulled it up on my other screen. I'm looking at it right now. This is wonderful.
It's really, really cool, and it's super powerful.
Yeah.
It works. And so I think you've done that naturally in a lot of ways, but for other people too, you can share it with them as well. And if you're watching, just Google Ikigai, pull up a diagram. There's worksheets where you can go work through it and fill it out yourself. Very, very helpful. Going back to mental health over the years, I'm not going to list all of them, but like 4for4, Fantrax, Football Guys, NumberFire, Fantasy, blah, 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 Fantasy Life. You've been at a lot of places.
Yes.
Yes. How have you seen the fantasy sports industry evolve from when you started to where it is now? And do you think mental health awareness has played any role in that?
I would say, to answer the second question first, yes, I think mental health has played, like at least the awareness portion has played like a large part in it. I'd say the largest thing that I've seen change over the last like probably like 4 to 5 years is the influx or the increase in video content. I think when I first started, it was, primarily written content. If you're a good writer, solid writer, you'll go far in this industry. And it was the bigger names, of like the people that would be on TV or whatever, back in like the classic Roto World days, where it was like RotoPat, like Evan Silver, Rich Rebart, all those, like Josh Norris and all those folks, or like Matthew Berry, like on his, like doing his thing over at ESPN. Like you would see those guys and you just think like, okay, like if you can be on TV, of course you've made it. But especially during like throughout the pandemic, but now with YouTube being an easy like platform for people to get content out on, TikTok being an easy way, Instagram. So many streaming services, social media like platforms that are available for folks. It allow like having multiple avenues or ways for people to get workout has made things easier. But now also there's almost more of a pressure to be able to do some of those things.
Bit of a double-edged sword, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people that are comfortable like getting on camera and either just like talking as they normally would, or maybe putting on a different persona because they are just more comical, or just whatever, in order to generate more interest, like it's been good, but at the same time it can become burdensome for a lot of people. Like speaking for myself personally, I don't know how many times like over the years where I've come home from work and like I've had a show at 7, 8, 9 o'clock. I'm just like, I just don't know if I got it in me.
Yeah.
Like I just like I've had a long day. I'll come home and like, spend time with the family, like make dinner or whatever, like the kids doing whatever. And then it's like, now I have to get ready and like make myself like most mentally prepared in order to like be ready for this show. I probably got like, there's probably a number of shows I've done at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock, like where it's like, you can see like bags under my eyes, like I sound tired or whatever, but you're trying to get yourself pumped up because you want to sound energetic and you want to like,
got to make good content.
You got to make good content. You can't let people know that you're tired. It's that push where it's like, if people look at you and they see you like you're not as energetic, they see you like you might like look tired or you're not as amped up or whatever. It's like, well, I'll just go watch this other guy. I'll go listen to this other person. I'll go watch this other show and all that. So I think that is like to your point, that's the double-edged sword to it. It's like, so while I like it, while I still like, I love to do it. Like when I've had a good night's rest, or it's like I'm as energetic as I am now on a Saturday afternoon, I've had time to rest and recharge a little bit. But I think that's the evolution where I see the need for it, and I see the positives for it, where more content creators are able to get their stuff out and showcase like who they are and what their style is, what their flavor is. Because I mean, just text doesn't do that as well as just being able to sit here and talk to somebody. But I think on the flip side, that is where who you are and how good you are at like maintaining your sense of self, that becomes like much more of a thing that I don't think goes as talked as much, like versus just like going out and just I'm gonna hop in front of a camera and I'm gonna start talking for 45 minutes. It's like that's not as easy as most folks think it might be.
Right. It really isn't. Even this show, man. I've had a few of the episodes like big people, and I like didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I had just did 7 or 8 in a row and had worked all day. I worked with kindergartners, spent 7 hours with them, and like my brain is fried. Man up and do it, and like the whole man up kind of pull yourself up by the tough
right. Yeah, even that does becomes problematic at times. Yeah, but I'm with you. It's like well, what are you gonna do? You just gonna skip the show? You just gonna like my internet's out, so we might have to reschedule. It's like it's like you can't just get out of your responsibilities, but at the same time like understanding, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? How do I work through this rut that I find myself in to the point where now I can start to be a bit more confident or sound a bit more energetic, or just like get myself to the mental state where I am capable of putting out content that I'm good with, I'm happy with, or for the most part.
Well, and I think that self-awareness is a skill that has to be developed, and for a lot of people that have struggles internally, whether it is small time struggles with mental health, they have some anxiety issues that aren't like really ruining their life but are making it worse, or people who have full-blown anxiety issues that are ruining their life. I would put myself under that category. And people with bipolar issue, that's not me. I know plenty of them, had a few of them on the show. Like there's so many different categories of things that really can be completely interruptive towards your life, and disruptive is the word. Having self-awareness to know, like you said, why do I feel this way right now is really difficult for some people. But for the most part, once you're able to like accept you for who you are and not who you think everyone else wants you to be, then you can be honest with yourself about what you need to deliver in the way that you want to present yourself. Like if we're getting on camera, that's a long-winded way to say like you got to learn about yourself before you can get over that stuff. And as an example for me, this show, I reached out to you and was like, hey, initially a couple weeks ago, I was like, hey, is there anyone from Fantasy Life that wants to do talk about mental health, or you think had a good story to share? And I didn't even I didn't even ask you. And in my head, I was like, I forgot, but I don't think I did. I think in my head, I had anxiety about coming to you about it because we were talking about other things.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years to try and be better about those things. But historically speaking, 2 or 3 years ago, like this show, somebody had a family event. They backed out. I hit you up yesterday and was like, hey, can we move it around? Can you hop out on this one? 2 years ago, I wouldn't. I would have just not done it. And I've just been like, I'm going to go take a nap on Saturday instead and wallow in my own misery. And I'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it took a lot of therapy and self-awareness to learn about these coping and escape mechanisms that I deal with. But it's not about me sharing all of this just to say, like, for people like you and anyone else out there, you've got to learn about yourself and your own weaknesses and really own them. And then once you do, start down the therapeutic journey of becoming a better person.
Yeah, and I think on the flip side, it was one of those moments where, like, when you asked about other people, I was like, part of me was like, well, why can't I come on the show? I was like, well, can I come on? But at the same time, it was like, well, don't internalize it. There's a way that you can work through any of this angst or whatever it is that you're feeling in a constructive manner. And that's when I reached out. It's like, well, if you'd like me to come on the show, absolutely, like I'd be more than willing to go. I mean, like you saw how I just proposed, not like, hey, why didn't you ask me to come on your show? Like I'll ask, I'll ask all the other guys at Fantasy Life, they won't come, but why can't I come on? Like it wasn't in a negative way. It was just like, hey, if you want me to come on, I'd be more than happy to come on. If not, I completely understand. But like, I'd rather approach it that way versus beforehand, almost like 2-3 years ago, I'd have been like, well, I mean, screw this Ronnie, dude. Like, why am I doing this job for him? Like, why? Like, he can just ask Sam or Jake or anybody else. Why do I got to do this stuff for him? Like, I'm just doing his job. forget this dude. I don't even want to be on a show anyway. So, but like that was even like a moment for me where I was like, well, how can I deal with this in a much more positive manner versus like even like it's a small bit of me that was like, well, I want to come on the show. I mean, you know, I mean, he's got some pretty cool guests on there and everything. I want to come on the show too. But you know what I'm saying? Like, even then it's like, you have to work through those things. And like both the things that both of us have been saying so far is understanding who you are and being able to like at least constructively work through some of those things. That's where a lot of self-awareness becomes like much more, it becomes much more helpful in those moments.
Oh, hey, we got a little shout out from Wendy.
Oh, hey, Wendy.
Early.
Wendy's wonderful.
She's amazing. I love her. So going back to you, one of the things that I've got a few of these. Let me just navigate this for a second. It's a mental health show. I'll be a little unprofessional here. It's fun.
See, and you said we'd be done with this in 45 minutes. I've tried to tell you, like, it's you get me on a show, boy. Like, it's
hey, to be clear to all the listeners,
time limit is just not a thing with me.
The goal is 45, but people are engaged. We got a lot of comments. We can keep going. So looking at this run through here, community engagement wise, you're pretty engaged. You talked earlier about how you used to post a little bit more about like self post about what you're going through or sharing and so forth. There is an element in this industry that is older, and I have had personal discussions with a lot of them over the last 2 years about mental health stuff. And ironically, or surprisingly to me, some of the advice was, well, you shouldn't talk about it. People don't understand, it hurts your brand. And I think there is some truth to that, but it really comes down to like how you present. And if for example, you get out like, oh, everybody, I'm suicidal today, and it's
probably that's a little tough.
Like it's a little much. It's good to share. It's never bad to share. But if you're trying to make a career in the industry, as you identified earlier, like being true, like being honest about yourself and sharing what makes you different, finding your niche. In a lot of ways, sometimes those differences that you view as negative can actually act as a competitive advantage for your content. And it's been great for me, but for you, how have not mental health criticism, but the fantasy industry in general, there's a lot of scrutiny and feedback that can be negative from people. You alluded to it earlier. What are some tips and tricks, and what is your strategy to handling the criticism and advice that you give others facing like a similar challenge?
Go into every article that you submit, every tweet that you put out, like every piece of content, trying to consider the other side of your argument. Like regardless of how steadfast you're in, it could just be the most like no-brainer, like simplest of takes, whatever. Like Christian McCaffrey is the RB1. Like that seems fairly innocuous. Like if you were to post that on Twitter, you'd probably just get a lot of people just saying like, yeah, no, duh. Like we know Christian McCaffrey is like the RB1. But even something as simple as that can be met with some resistance. It could be like, oh, well, Breece Hall. Like you ever heard of a guy like named Breece Hall, or you ever heard of a dude named Kyren Williams isn't like the best example, but it's like there will always be some sort of resistance to everything that you say because it's online, it's social media, it's people wanting to argue just to argue. You will always come across that person that will have the opposite take of whatever it is that you're saying. So I would say being at least not agreeable to, but at least open to like the opposite side of whatever your argument might be or whatever your take might be, at least provide you with some sort of floor to say that, so that whenever somebody does come at you sideways, your reaction is not always going to be one of defense. Because if you're always going to be in defensive mode, then your reaction or like the way that you interact with somebody is going to be combative. It's going to be, well, I said this and like you're wrong, and like all like your response will be much more open. It's like, well, I've considered that, but this and this makes me think that, like, Christian McCaffrey is like the RB1, like because he gets so many touches or like whatever, or I can kind of see your argument because they've had Elijah Mitchell, they've had all these other guys. It did just draft another running back, so I guess it's possible. And Breece Hall doesn't have Breece Hall does have a couple of guys behind him, but it's like I can kind of see your point. Like you don't have to just all of a sudden acquiesce to like any other like differing point than what somebody else is putting out there, but at the very least considering the opposite side to whatever it is that you're putting out, it at least puts you in that state where it's like, if somebody does come at you and says like the complete opposite, or you're wrong, or this is stupid, or whatever, like if somebody says this is stupid, it's like, okay, well, fine. Like you're probably not like at least willing to have a civil discussion about whatever it is that I'm saying. But at the very least, like just coming in with the idea that, well, okay, I might be wrong. Okay, this might be a little, like I'm saying this is what I believe in, but I'm only 75% sure, or 50% sure, or even 25% sure, based off of whatever thoughts or data points that you might have. But from there, at least it allows much more of an open discussion versus just saying whatever you want to say and then just like just fighting with somebody immediately afterwards, and then like trying to at least becoming much more argumentative versus being much more just like willing to have the debate, willing to have the discussion, which I think a lot of folks aren't as good at on social media, I think, as they used to be.
Yeah, it's you basically just described the Judgement Seesaw, so I love it.
I did my homework.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Throwing in just like actually just for the heck of it, a little AI nugget. I love that advice, like preparing yourself for the opposite side of the equation when you put out content there that is going to exist. And so if like right now, ChatGPT now has all of their previous models are free, so you can get on and run GPT-4, and it has web browsing.
Mhm.
Just go plug your article in. If you're somebody that's like doing solo content, get the free subscription to ChatGPT, plug in your article, and ask it, hey, give me 15 things that people would argue with me about for this, just to like see it before you post. And it might help prepare you for a little bit of the backlash that might come. It might not, but set you up to be less defensive. And those things won't be a surprise anymore.
Right.
Spur of the moment thought, that is not something I've done before, but exercises like that I think can be helpful.
Yeah.
We've got one or two comments, and then I'll move into one or two of these questions. Hold on. It's a lawyer type mindset. Now you responded to Chris already, or Brian already. In my opinion, I think I could be wrong as much as I can, and more of that could go a long way for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, owning that it's my opinion. Like, this is just what I think. This is the data I analyzed. Here's my take on it. If you disagree, that's okay.
Yeah, but let's talk about it versus just like coming at people and saying, and I know like folks like people that do rankings, this is really one of the reasons why I don't do rankings, is because like the like you just post rankings and people are like, yeah, this list sucks. This person's too low.
Right.
Like this guy's at 10. Like what? Like it's just like, all right, man. Like, what do you want from me? Like, well, we can talk about it, but at the same time, it's like not every know my process. Yeah, not everything needs a response, and like, but still, if you have no idea my process going into it, how can you judge with like and just immediately say like, well, this is stupid. Like, oh, CJ Stroud is too low. Like, you got him at 5. Like, he should be number 1. It's like, well, okay, but why? Let's talk about that.
I would love to see more people doing that type of thing less. And also for people that are creating content, recognizing sometimes that is actually just meant to be a joke. I would share sometimes. I have a guy every year. I pick a rookie, and I'm like, "This is my guy. I'm just going to stand him, regardless of what's out there. Stand him just as a bit."
Yeah,
it's Jalen Wright this year for me, and I like Jeff Bell put out a ranking a few weeks ago, and he had Jalen Wright as like RB6 or something. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, good article. How come Jalen Wright so low?" Like, obviously, I was joking. He laughed. Right. We moved on.
Oh,
very wonderful. Different than if you like read a comment like that, it might actually be a joke versus this is a terrible article. Jalen Wright is number 7. Like, very different type of thing. And so keeping an eye on and trying to understand like the context is very difficult when we're communicating only over text. But again, less reactive judgment, more like understanding type reaction always goes a long way in communicating. You have, I think it's a pretty demanding career, man. Like you're an engineer, you work for Matthew Berry, you've worked for other companies, you're working a lot, and you're working on some pretty complex and high level things. So how do you manage your time and energy to ensure like a healthy work-life balance? And what role does this balance play in your mental health?
To be honest, like for a large portion of my career here in the sports media industry, like it hasn't been as balanced as it should be. To the point where like, and I'll be 100% honest, like my wife and I have had like some pretty tough conversations about how much time that I spend just like away and like out, like and not available to both like her and my kids. Like we have 3 children. Like one's out of the house now, but like we still have our 2 boys. But again, the last like 2 to 3 years, especially with like my demand, like I said, not as a flex, but like just being asked to do more things,
Sure.
being asked to write more articles a week and be on more shows. Communication between not just like myself and my wife, but then also like my supervisor, to just let them know like, hey, like these are the things that are being asked of me, like these are the, but like how do I make this fit? Because me just summarily saying, well, I'm going to get home from work at about like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then just lock myself away in my office for the next 2 to 3 hours, like writing, researching, doing podcasts, and then maybe coming out and shoveling food in my mouth and going back into my office for another like 3-4 hours. That's not tenable. That doesn't work. My wife, she also has a full-time job. It doesn't work for my kids. So like, what is the way that we can make this work like for everybody? And that is where communication helps. That's where a lot of late nights like wind up being the case, where I do get the chance to like see and talk with my wife. I do get my kids to where they need to go. Active participant like around the house, like I make dinner, like all the things that like a parent / adult and person that's in a partnership like with their spouse, like that's what you do. But that I would say like that's played like a huge, like that's been a huge hit to my mental health, because I wasn't doing that when I first started off, because it was that excitement. It was that, how do I say no? Yahoo just hit me up. They want me to do like an extra article per week. How do I say no to Yahoo?
Yeah.
Oh, NBC also wants me to write for them. How do I say no to this? Oh, I'm being asked to do a Sunday morning show with Sigmund Bloom like every week. How do I say, like it's those things that as like the opportunities come, and of course it's like you feel that sense of, well, I can't say no to this, I can't say no to that. But at the same time, it's like, well, again, you only have so many hours in the day, and you still have the same responsibilities that you have as a husband, as a parent, as a civilian for the Air Force. And before then, I was a contractor for an engineering consulting firm. It's like those responsibilities still remain. So what are you giving up? Like, what are you taking off of your plate in order to put some like more onto your plate? And beforehand, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was trying to do everything, like trying to still be an active like member in the household, still trying to like hang out with my friends and like playing video games and doing all those other things. Like most of that stuff is gone now. It's like, if these are the things that I'm doing, and I now want to also have like a healthy relationship with my wife, have a healthy relationship with my kids, then some of that stuff has to go. Like, and it's just, and again, harping on the same thing that you and I have been saying this entire show: self-awareness, acceptance of like who you are, what you're truly capable of doing. And like, once you get to that point where it's like, man, I probably can't stay up drinking until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday like I used to, because my kids have soccer games, or even just being able to get up with them so I can make breakfast for them and spend a couple more, an hour with them, like, which is what I did this morning, because they get up at like 7:30 in the morning and wake me up, and I'm like,
how old are they?
10 and 8.
Okay.
So like, well, shit, I guess I'm up now. Might as well make breakfast. Like, well, let's go ahead and do this. But it's like, it's stuff like that where it's like but just having that conversation and being able to admit, like, not just to yourself, but to your spouse and to the other people around that count on you to be a part of their lives, and saying like, hey, like these are the things that I'm trying to do, but I can only have like, so much. Like that's where it becomes like all the more important. And it really helps like with the mental load that becomes a part of that, because it's not just all on you. It's not just all on you to make sure that, that the things that are getting done, because you're in a partnership with your spouse. You're in a partnership with the people at work. So like having that level of communication, like it helps a ton, but it requires you to be on the the proactive person in that, because so much you're responsible for so many things. And that's the thing I've had to learn over the past like couple of years or so.
That's amazing, and it really comes back down to like boundaries also, like
Yeah.
and like being able to say, I somebody hit me up to come up on Kevin Murray hit me up to get on his show this
Oh
month.
yeah, he's
Yeah,
awesome.
I
Yeah.
love Kevin. He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's become a decent friend of mine,
Mhm.
and I told him, nope. I
Yeah.
like for the sake of my mentals, man, I'm doing this show this month. I'm not.
Mhm.
And I also this AI stuff. I don't know. Like I'm ready, but
No.
internally I don't feel ready. Let's do it next month. Can we do it in July? He had
Yeah.
no problem. Exactly what you were saying a year or two ago. I would have been like, oh my gosh, Kevin Murray.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Like,
Like,
and that's that phrase, I'll figure it out. Like,
yeah,
I'll figure it out. Not like me and my partner will figure it out, or me and my like it's just like I'll figure it out.
but you won't. Like you'll
Yeah.
figure it out to make that happy at the cost of something else.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and I also you were talking like you kept bringing up your wife and your kids and your family. This is extreme, but I don't remember who it was. Someone many years ago in group therapy was talking about how they try to value stuff.
Mhm.
I think it was in an AA meeting, and he said, "I look at it this way: if there was an apocalypse tomorrow, what would I care about? That's where my
Oh,
values
okay.
start."
That, whew. Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, but like
Well,
maybe let's take the apocalypse side out of it." And I think he
there
was
has to be
saying,
some
like,
sort of
if
intermediate step in there.
if everything else went away and I didn't have access to it and I really was just focusing on myself, what is actually important to me? And he was like,
Yeah.
my parents and my kids. And for that guy, it wasn't his wife, but
Oh, all right.
like that, like whatever that nucleus is for you, he was divorced and was different.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. All right.
But like you don't have to think about the apocalypse, but for you, like you're putting up boundaries to protect the things that are most important to you. And then
Mhm.
as you can layer other things on top of that in a healthy manner, you do so. That is growth, it's maturity, it's part of becoming an adult. It's not something everyone figures out in their 20s. Oftentimes it's something we learn in our 30s.
No, I'm
And
40, still trying to figure it out.
well, and it is always like the impulse to go do cool things that make you feel good is so
Yeah.
strong. It's so strong and hard to push away on. But eventually you got to just say, hey, I can't go out with you guys tonight. My kid has soccer tomorrow. Sorry. I play Fortnite with about 40 people in the fantasy industry now. I
Oh,
started a little group and we
League of
call it
Legends
Fantasy
for
Fortnite.
me. Yeah.
And we hop on over the last month and 2 months. I've been playing less and less because I know I'm about to start doing content, and eventually I might not be able to do that anymore. I'm
Yeah.
going to be doing a separate show with someone that's related to that. That's all I'll say. But
That's cool.
yeah, I'll tell you after the show.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, yeah, setting up boundaries is really, really, really important. And it's also really, really hard to do when you are trying to find a place in a new area, if you just moved, or if you're trying to find a place in a career path, because
Yeah.
the instinct is like, I can't have boundaries. Whatever anyone asks of me, I must do.
Mhm.
Otherwise, doors aren't going to open. That's not the
Yeah.
case. People will respect you if you're like, hey, I love you. I can't.
No.
The
Or even
expo-
coming in with like the next best thing. It's like, okay, well, maybe I can't do this 4 times a week, but maybe I could do it once a week or twice a week, or it doesn't have to be. Maybe sometimes it's not just a binary yes no. Maybe it's if you think about it and you say that, hey, I can give you 100%. Maybe I can give you 25%. Maybe I can give you 10%,
Right.
and if that's okay. If not, okay. But at least thinking through that and being able to like try and be as a good steward of your time and what their expectations are and trying to set them responsibly, I think it goes a long way.
It's almost like building a bridge. Like when people come up to you and ask you, or things show up, you have like this chasm between it, and you want to
Mhm.
say yes or no, yell across the river, be like, hey, yeah, sure, I got you. Well, I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
If instead you say, hey, hold on, we need to actually talk. Let's set a
Uh-huh.
bridge up and let me meet you in the middle here and see if we can actually do this. People respect you for that, and they actually like it more than just like, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
You build relationships that way too. And a lot of times in a career or in any community over time, as you have honest discussions that aren't always delivering what people want, but you're explaining why, you'll build a lot more brownie points, for lack of a better term, with that person over time and develop those relationships.
I agree. Oh.
Last 2 things here, and then I want to keep talking, but let's wrap it up.
All right.
Get too long. So you mentored a lot of aspiring analysts. You contributed to a pretty supportive Amuses You. You got the cookout coming on right now to help with this particular subset, so on and so forth. How important do you believe mentorship is in fantasy sports, and how has mentoring others impacted your, not only just your mental health, but your career?
Mentorship. Well, let me back up. Uh, Mentorship. Let's I want to try and define it for other people. At least for me, mentorship is being able to show a person not just like your path, because like most people would say like, well, if you just tell people what your experiences is, like that's mentorship in a sense. But for me, being able to mentor somebody is also being able to show them like not just like what your path was, but how they can mold their skill sets and create their own path, and also how to build their skill sets, and like to essentially how do you take a person from point A where they're at now to point B, which would be like what their goals are. And that for me, that's mentorship. And it's hilariously important in this industry, because like we were talking earlier about people that come in and they make a lot of noise like super early, but then things start to flame out and they get frustrated and they get, and they just stop doing content like altogether. That's where somebody walking alongside them and like asking them like some of the tough questions, like, well, what are you really providing on a day-to-day basis? Like, what has changed from when you were getting like hundreds of followers and doing all these things? Like, what's changed between now and then? Like, is it something about your content? It's how you're presenting the things that you're presenting, like online or in your writing or in your videos or something along those lines, just relating it back to content creation.
Yeah.
But like, is it something that you're not providing, or is it a skill set that like people just like aren't really like latching onto as much as they used to? But like it goes back again to self-awareness. Like some folks like don't, like they might be able to notice it, like notice the change, but they won't be able to have the answers to say like, well, what is actually changing about what I'm doing or my audience, or like the connection or the feedback and all of that. And a mentor can do that for you. And I think that that's part of why a lot of folks do get frustrated. Why you saw like a lot of that boom, like during the pandemic, like when people just had like nothing but a camera and like and a microphone. It's like, well, I'm going to go try my hand at doing fantasy football stuff. And then a lot of those people just aren't around as much anymore because and like, I think we say it every year where we say that the industry is saturated. There's so many more new content creators coming in, so many people like writing, so many people like starting their Patreon or whatever. But you can see like the same people but the same people are still around like year after year. And some people like come and go. And there's reasons why for that, like why that happens. And I think a lot of it is because like those people, not just because they might have mentors, they might not, but their content is unique. They found a path that allows them to stay at the forefront of the industry. And mentors and people that have been in the industry and have those experiences, at least have the connections to to put you in front of people that know how to do that type of work. Like that's where you can stay like and continue to build your craft and work on things. So I found it to be like an immense tool or a relationship that people like should create once they get in, so that if you do really feel like, hey, maybe I'm not cut out for this, like that mentor should be able to tell you like, well, maybe you aren't, or like, yes, you are. You just have to do these things. Like, and and if people don't have that answer and people don't have that person to tell them like, yep, like, no, you got something, like just work on this or try and like fix this, or have
posting at the wrong time of the day.
Or just like it could be simple stuff. It could be more complex things, but without that type of relationship, without that type of, person in your corner, more or less to kind of keep pushing you along or to guide you, that's where I think a lot of folks do wind up fizzling out. So yeah, I would 100% like advocate like for people finding a mentor. And like we were talking earlier about some of like the titans in this league, the people that you feel that are, the JJ Zacharyasons of the world, or the Evan Silvas of the world, or like whomever that you might feel aren't as approachable. Like you might be able to just like hit them up and say like, hey, I'm having trouble with this thing. Can you help me so I can get better at the thing that I'm doing? And like most likely those people can turn into like the mentor that you might need to help push you to the next level.
Even if it's just micro bursts of mentorship too.
Yeah.
Like JJ Zachariason, for example, we both have had some interactions with him. Yours have been much more intensive than mine, but I did something similar. I hit him up 3 or 4 months ago and was like, hey, AI, like I'm all over this. I really don't know how the industry is. You want to talk about it at some point? We chatted a little bit. That was it. We haven't talked much since then, but I know he's around if I need him.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
that, like a micro burst of mentorship, I think is also just as valuable if you can get 15 of those over the course of a year versus having a singular person. But I think the singular mentor is super valuable, of course. And it's
Yeah, however you wind up getting it or accomplishing it, it can be multiple people, it can be one person, but however you get in order to like, so you can answer those questions, like simple or tough, like, hey, how do I start to tweet better or whatever? That's on the simple side. Or the tougher side is like, am I really cut out to do this? Like, am I just completely maxed out all my skills and I have no other free time because I'm working another job, and like, you know, the same situation I find myself in, what other folks have, like multiple people have also found themselves in. It's like, hey, I don't have enough time to do this. This is all I got. Is it good enough? And somebody might be able to answer that question for you and help put you on the right path.
right. And ironically, actually, I just realized that's literally how our connection started. I hit you up and it was like, hey, this is what I'm working on. I got questions. Can you answer them?
Yeah.
And
Do my best.
yeah. And so live and breathe what you preach is an important part of
Always try to
leading things. With the industry in general and mental health. Last question here on that front, and then we can wrap this up. We'll have to do this again sometime for sure.
Oh yeah.
Looking forward, what are your goals for the future, both professionally and personally? I know that is a loaded question. You don't have to say all of them, but how do you plan on continuing to advocate for mental health awareness in the fantasy community?
Through at least through the cookout and like talking through like the mentorship portion, because I want to see more like more people of color like start to come into this industry and like and shine and find their voice and be able to present themselves and like and their culture and their stories as much as possible. And so that's why I try and preach so much about like getting folks connected with folks that have been in this industry for a while and have some of those stories and can relate to some of the trials and tribulations that people that are just starting out like can talk to nowadays. Like that's why I really hope to, like, for a personal goal of mine is to really like start like turn the cookout group like into like the next, not necessarily like Fantasy Cares, but just like a not-for-profit organization where we're bringing in new people, like the next generation of content creators, like people that are going to be a part of like the sports media industry, and like taking it not just from folks that are working in like these part-time roles like myself, but I want to get to colleges. I want to go like to I want to get to like I want to like change the industry from that standpoint where we're getting like more younger folks in the industry. While I don't think I would have like immediately hopped into like sports media or like fantasy football coming right out of college with I graduated, like my undergraduate degree is in biomedical engineering. I got my master's in mechanical engineering. But like if somebody told me 20 years ago, dating myself at this point, but if somebody told me like 20 years ago when I was like about to graduate from undergrad, if like there might be a career for me in like sports media, I mean, like, no, like that's not a thing. Like I want to go work for a medical device company because that's what I was really like passionate about.
Good money in that field.
Yeah, good money in that. Like, so, or like if you're a mechanical engineer, you go work on cars because that's the thing that people always assume. Or if you're aerospace engineers, you go work on airplanes again because that's the thing people assume that you do. Civil engineers go work on bridges because, like, you see where I'm going with this. But but all of the traditional like jobs or like industries that you go based off your degree, want to try and change that, or at least give people like another thought process to like, you just have a technical background. That is what you have. And if you want to try and apply that to data science or, you know, whatever, like there's another way for you to try and like find your way like throughout life if a traditional job is not going to be available to you like right out of the bat or right out of the gate. So like mentorship for sure, but also just changing this industry from that standpoint to bring in like just more younger talent, because I'm getting old and I don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing this. And the same goes for like all the rest of us. And if we can start to have just more younger folks that are a part of the industry, is like where I want to try and push things. But that's at least like a personal goal, like for myself. But then also, or at least a professional goal for myself personally, being able to find happiness and continue to find happiness in all of this. And I do. I really do. Like, I'm not going to be a big like Twitter following account like Ian Harditz and like all the rest of the guys that I happen to work with here. That's never going to be my thing. I'm not as vocal as any of the other people that I happen to work with on a day-to-day basis. But do I garner as much respect as some of those guys? In my personal opinion, I think yes. I think I've done enough good work. I think I show enough of my work that people do attach themselves to like what I do and what I write and what I say. And I'm happy with that. I'm very proud of like where I'm at like right now. And as I continue to do more in this industry and like continue to work at Fantasy Life, I'm hoping I can bring more people like to the brand and help the company grow. Like for the most part. So again, that's just a professional goal, like for me, and like personally, again, just like making sure that I'm just happy with what I do. And if I'm not happy with it, also having the self-awareness to say like, hey, it's time to walk away and try and do something else, but while still being able to maintain friendships like this one and like all the others I've made along the way. But like that's at least where I'm at, like as of right now.
I love it. Well, and it all seems to center back around what you've harped on a lot in this episode. It's just like inclusivity and like being there to help other people and lift them up and show best practices and mentor and so on and so forth. Being there as a positive force for progress in a space that you are currently operating in. I think you're doing that. I think you're there, and just keep it up. Like
trying,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Last note from me: are you familiar with Michael Porter? What is strategy?
No, I'm not.
Oh man,
I'm learning all sorts of stuff today.
It is so juicy. So Michael Porter, What is Strategy, came out in the Harvard Business Review in like 97, I think. And it has been like the seminal paper that has redefined and dictated what global business strategy has operated under for the last 30 years or so.
Interesting.
And in it, I'm going to dilute it a lot, but just to speak to what you were talking about. You kept on talking about like, well, what is your purpose? Like, what's your, like finding your space in this industry? You got to be consistent, having someone there to tell you what isn't working and so on and so forth. And all of that, Michael Porter would argue, falls under the umbrella of strategy. And in his opinion, which apparently was correct because it's caused trillions of dollars of business growth over the last 30 years.
Oh, okay.
Is it's about uniqueness. And like, if you want to go do something and make a mark, you can't necessarily just do what everyone else is doing. You have to find a unique competitive edge and the ability to do something that is different, that also accomplishes everything else that is going on in any related project or product in a similar or better capacity. But if you can find a unique competitive edge, that is the core of defining success. And for you harped on, you kind of illustrated that in a lot of your advice through this episode, like finding out like your content, what is true to you, find out what the unique thing that you offer is, and focus on that and make that part of your brand. And it's been advice that I hope that I have been able to embrace, and I think I'm doing it at the very early stages, but the AI and mental health stuff is like my uniqueness, and I hope can be my competitive edge. But it doesn't have to be as big picture as that. Chris got started talking about fucking weather. Excuse my language, but like you can like figure out what your niche is, what that competitive, unique thing is that you are going to offer, and then focus on it and turn it into part of your brand. And if you do that, and you're a good person and you communicate happily with other people,
right,
you will have a place in the fantasy sports industry.
I believe that. I 100% believe that. And that's why you'll see a lot of the same folks that are just around year in and year out that continue to contribute, continue to find opportunities or stay with the opportunities that they have. I mean, it's not that much of a mystery as to why the same folks keep sticking around here.
Well, I appreciate that. I also, just looking at my little note thing here, I talked a decent amount, and I think I talked about myself a lot. This is the first episode where I've harped so much on my own stories, I hope, because the goal
beautiful.
is you.
I love that. Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that out of me. You've given tons of great insight. It's Chris Allen, FFWX. What does the FFWX stand for before we
Fantasy football, and then the WX is for weather.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So it's Chris. I'm Ronnie. This has been the Judgment Seesaw. Any final thoughts from your end before I throw that video up and we get out of here?
I mean, of course, I have to plug the site. Like, I got to do that, right? I got to be a good company man.
Oh, yes.
So go on over to Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life, fantasylife.com. The free newsletter that goes out like every day throughout the week. Yours truly writes the Wednesday version. I just write the intro. The other content that from the other content creators comes out, whether from Pete Overzet, Dwayne McFarland, Ian Hartitz, Cooter Doodle. I mean, Jonathan Fuller. I mean, like insert name here. I mean, we are in the newsletter. We got Jake Trowbridge, Kendall Valenzuela, like on TikTok. Myself, like Marcus Grant, like doing stuff over on the YouTube channel. I mean, we've got stuff everywhere. So even throughout the off season, while there's like, you know, it's best ball, we might be, we'll dive into redraft stuff in the next couple of months. Always going to be content there, but go into, if you like any of the other like content creators that I've mentioned, I don't even matter. Like go check out the other folks that are there at Fantasy Life. But yeah, you know, try and, you know, check my stuff out too. And let me know what you think. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, the only point, the last point that I'll make goes back to what I was talking about like earlier about like not posting enough. Don't mistake my silence for just being like off-putting or not outgoing. Ever want me to come on a show, like I've told you before, or like guest spot or whatever, just want to talk, like just DM me. Like I try and be as responsive as possible, like through DMs. So if you ever want to talk, ever want to like have my thoughts on or feedback on an article that you're working on, project you're working on, or just thoughts in general, or just want to say hey, because I'm a home brewer. I have other hobbies like outside of fantasy football. So if you ever want to talk, just let me know and just like shoot me a DM. Always happy to talk about it, whatever.
Love it. Well, I can echo that as an example for Chris. We DM'd quite a bit over the last couple months. And at one point I had sent you a message and then I followed up a few weeks ago and you immediately were like, oh my God, I forgot.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I couldn't believe I was like,
that is, Chris, that's not normal. It's not how people act. Like Chris really does mean what he says. For all of you that are watching, make sure to go follow him. He's a fantastic person. He's in the place he is in this industry for the right reasons, and it is justified in every single way I could think of. And I want to bring out one more thing, the cookout. If you are somebody in this industry, tell me if I get this wrong, but basically if you are in a minority group and you're in the sports space, reach out to Chris.
Please. Yes.
And just see how you can plug in and get helped out and get the advice and mentorship you need.
Yeah.
So, besides that, everyone love each other. Keep self-awareness as your priority. If you're struggling right now, try to look at yourself. It's hard to do. And figure out what you are doing in your day-to-day life that is hurting you, and talk to a therapist about it. It's the number one name of the game. So with all that said, Chris, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. And let's close this thing out.
What's going on between my ears? Everyone seems to be so clear, but I'm feeling foggy. I'm in the abyss. Let's talk about it with Ronnie and Chris. It's Mental Health Awareness Month.
It's Mental Health